Welcome back, Hive Mind. This is Shalazar with Hive Mind Gaming, coming at you with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Just so you know, this weekend is going to be slam-packed with a ton of stuff. Alright, so super excited about this video because we have tons to go over right now. So first off, we have a new legendary coming out this weekend with a Fragment event attached to him. Less than 24 hours, he's coming out. He's going to be a part of the Ogren tribe. He's going to be Spirit Affinity. He is going to be a support, and he is going to be a legendary. Here's his picture right here. If you've seen the video put out by them, last week, I believe it was, it showed a bunch of legendaries. He's the cool looking Ogren tribes that has the big slab rock on his back. He just looks badass. As usual, the art for this game is spot on, looking really sharp. There's no other information. Probably we'll do another video tomorrow. Once he actually comes out, we'll take a look at his kit and go over all that. All right, so that's the first big news. Don't get discouraged that it's another Fragment event. They did say that the next fusion event will be a normal fusion with actual fusion champs and not a fusion with for fragments. So don't worry, it is going to they are going to swap back and forth, I think, is how they're probably going to do it, so that people don't get discouraged and rage quit like we do. All right, so next we want to take a look at, actually we should probably stay in the index, because next, starting tomorrow, is also a 10-time summoning event. Now, here's what's cool. It's not going to be the only one this weekend. On Sunday, there's going to be another 10-time summoning event. So 2 in one weekend. Crazy, right? Not really. But anyway, just another way to grab our money, guys. Just another sink for our money. All right. So the 10-time summons that starts tomorrow is got some solid champs in it. The first one is Mr. Clan Boss himself, Vizier. Alright, so Vizier has an attack one enemy 3 times on his A1. Each hit has a 35% chance of increasing the duration of all debuffs by 1 turn. This is the only thing we care about. They could literally take the other things away, and this is all we care about. We're going to see the rest of his kit, but let's face it, that's the only thing we care about. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 50% chance of placing a block buffs debuff, a 50% decreased attack debuff, and a 100% heal reduction debuff for 2 turns. His A3 is attacks one enemy, applies a debuff spread effect, taking 2 random debuffs from the target and placing them on all enemies. Places a perfect veil buff on this champion for 3 turns if the target is under 2 or more debuffs. And then his passive places a perfect veil buff on this champion for 2 turns at the start of each round. And then of course his aura is increases ally attack in dungeons by 34%. So all around he's a shitty champ. But he's great for Clan Boss. He's not really viable anywhere else. I know other people use him in dungeons and things like that, but he's really stellar in Clan Boss. Because that's where he's going to shine. But if you don't have him, he's definitely one to help your Clan Boss. All right, next up is going to be Netheril. So he is a ton of fun. He attacks one enemy 3 times, has a 30% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns. His A2 is attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing a stun debuff on all enemies for 1 turn, and then places a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns if the target is under a stun debuff, which is fantastic in, well, everywhere in the game except for clan boss, but still great. Attacks all enemies, decreases the turn meter by 75%, which makes him great for Spider, makes him great for most dungeons. I mean, this guy's great, and in Arena, he's a beast. So, another solid champ. Next, we have, she just got her buff, Blind Seer. So, attacks 3 times at random. Each hit has a 30% chance of decreasing the turn meter by 15%. Places a block debuffs buff on all allies for 2 turns. Then places a shield buff on all allies for equal to, because, they're wording, to 30% of this champion's max HP for 2 turns. And, yeah, which is fantastic because they took her self-damaging part off of that ability. And then, I guess this is where they had that self-damaging part. Revives all dead allies to 35% HP, places a block damage buff on all allies except this champion for 1 turn. And then increases ally defense in all battles by 34%. So, she's fantastic now. I mean, she is absolutely a solid champ. Alright, now for epics, they are bringing in Allure. If you don't have Allure, she is a Flame Knight champ. I mean, just absolutely phenomenal, and it's because of this right here. Attacks 3 times at random, decreases the target's turn meter by 25% on each critical hit. So if she's at 100% crit rate, she's going to knock down 75% turn meter every time she hits the Flame Knight, Fire Knight. So yeah, she's awesome. And the other cool thing about that is when his turn meter is so high, she will automatically use her A1 and ignore the other 2, which is attacks all enemies 2 times. Each hit has a 30% chance of placing a 30% decreased defensive debuff for 1 turn, places a sleep debuff for 1 turn on targets under decreased defense debuff, and attacks 1 enemy has 1 extra 30% chance of inflicting a critical hit, will ignore 50% of the target's defense. And then, last but not least, her aura increases ally accuracy in faction crypts by 50. She is phenomenal. If you don't have her yet, now's a great time to try to get her. That is for sure. Next is Lightsworn, who is also a clan boss beast, an arena beast, and probably is great in dungeons as well. He hits really hard. He's just a solid champ. Will definitely help you, and I use him in faction crypts as well. Let's see. Attacks 1 enemy 3 times, decreases the target's turn meter by 10%. Attacks 1 enemy, places a 50% decreased attack debuff and a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. And then his fun ability, his A3, places a 60% increased defense debuff and a revive on death buff on all allies for 2 turns. So, solid champ. He hits really hard. His A2 just, devastates stuff. And then, last but not least, for this times 10, is Talia, who also hits really hard. She attacks 1 enemy 3 times on her A1. Her A2 places a 25% increased attack buff and a 30% increased crit rate buff on this champion for 2 turns, then attacks all enemies. Has a 75% chance of placing a bomb debuff that will detonate after 3 turns when Phoenix is on the same team. I guess that's her boyfriend. Aww. And then her A3 places a counterattack buff on this champion for 2 turns, has a 75% chance of placing a 25% weaken debuff on enemies for 2 turns. And then last but not least, this increases ally crit rate in dungeons by 15%. So let's move on to Sunday. That is the times 10 that starts tomorrow and will, or even today even, I'm not sure. And then within the next 24 hours, it's going to be a thing. So, and then on top of that, Sunday, they're going to start another times 10. Uh, the first the first one that's going to be on that one, whoops, wrong one, is going to be Tyrant. Tyrant is fantastic. So his A1 is attacks one enemy, heals this champion by 25% of the damage inflicted, heals this champion by 50% of the damage inflicted instead if the target is under HP burn. His A2 is attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of placing an HP burn debuff on all enemies for 3 turns, which puts up to 100%, which is badass. And then his A3 is places a 50% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns, places a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. This is awesome. Alright, and then his passive is decreases the damage inflicted by enemies under HP burn debuff by 10%. And then lastly, increases ally HP in all battles by 25%. So all around a solid champion. He is going to be great everywhere in the game. Alright, so next on the list is Crypt King. Crypt King, not great, but anyway, attacks one enemy, has a 60% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. His A2 is attacks 3 times at random, which is kind of dumb. Has a 50% chance of placing an HP burn debuff for 2 turns. I think at random skills should not be a thing on legendaries. They just shouldn't. Attacks all enemies, places a freeze debuff on each target for 1 turn if they are under an HP burn debuff, extends the duration of any HP burn debuff for to 3 turns. This effect cannot be resisted. That's actually really good. And then his aura increases ally HP in all battles by 33%. So he's not the greatest. He's not the greatest. All right, next is a greatest. Bigen. I mean, he is just he's just good. He's one of the better nukers in the game. His A1 attacks one enemy, attacks all enemies 1 time if this first attack is critical. Why you wouldn't build him with 100% crit rate, I don't know. Attacks all enemies, has a 30% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. Also has a 50% chance of placing a 50% decreased accuracy debuff for 2 turns. And then lastly, his nuke attacks all enemies 2 times, decreases the turn meter by 25%, has a 30% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. And then his aura increases ally accuracy in dungeons by 90%. So solid. Very, very solid. Alright, and then on to the epics. Alright, up next is Defiled Sinner. Not so good. Not so good. Attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns before attacking. If 5 or more enemies are alive, does the following attack instead. Attacks all enemies, places a 25% increased attack buff on this champion for 2 turns before attacking. And then his A2 is attacks one enemy, then attacks all enemies inflicting damage equal to 15% of their max HP if the first hit kills an enemy. The second hit cannot be critical. That's what's dumb. Alright. And then lastly, his A3 attacks all enemies, damage increases by 10% for each enemy alive. Stacks up to 100%. So not great. He's really just not great. He's just missed by that much. Alright, next is probably one of the strongest epics in the game. You guessed it, Royal Guard. If you don't have one of these guys, this might be a really great chance to get him. I think my first Royal Guard I got during one of these times 10 events, and he was my target for that times 10 event. And no regrets. No regrets at all. No regrets. Alright, his A1 attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. His A2 attacks all enemies. This is his big one. Damage increases according to the enemy max HP, and AoE max HP damaging ability. Great for waves, great for bosses. He doesn't care. He's just killing whatever's around. Attacks 4 times at random. Each hit has a 60% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. Each hit also has a 60% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 25%. And lastly, his aura increases ally attack in dungeons by 35%. So, one of the top epics in the game. And lastly, on the list, is Lua, who is absolutely solid. She's going to get you places, I promise. Attacks one enemy, deals 50% of the inflicted damage to all enemies if this attack is critical. Her A2 attacks all enemies 3 times. Each critical hit heals this champion by 2.5% HP. And then lastly, attacks one enemy, decreases the target's turn meter by 100%, will ignore shield and block damage buffs. She is solid. She will do damage. I promise you. Alright, that's it, guys. That is all the info coming out this weekend. There is a ton of stuff happening. We just had the patch drop yesterday. We've got this coming out either today or tomorrow within the next 24 hours. Sunday, we've got another times 10. We've got the fusion. What the hell is going on with Polarium? It's almost like they're actually doing some work. All right, let's get it. All right, if you like what you've seen, you want to see more, hit the like button and the subscribe button. And other than that, have a great day. We'll see you next time. Bye.